Welcome to Tips for the Transition, where we have deep, meaningful conversations about life. We talk about how significant changes like divorce, grief, and career change can affect us, our family, our relationships, and our work, and how to move beyond them. I'm your host, Maria Tomás-Keegan, certified career and life coach for women, and I'm here to support you through the messy seasons of life so you can answer big questions like who am I now and how do I move on from here? If you're ready to consider new options, be inspired, and meet incredible women who are on this life journey with us, you're in the right place. You'll find something in each episode to give you hope and encourage you to move from panic to powerful, from rocky to resilient, and from upside down to right side up. This is Tips for the Transition. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Thanks. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, your host. And as a career coach, I am passionate about helping professional women who want to feel fulfilled in their careers and create more harmony in their lives. Because I believe when your career is a soulful fit, it won't become a soul-sucking experience. So each week, I invite inspiring guests to be role models for us and resources to help you make the moves you want to make. So if something strikes a chord, resonates with you as we're talking today, take a look at the show notes below for all the connection points you can find for my guest and me. So today I want you to meet Megan Smiley because she used to be one of those women who felt stuck in her career as a corporate attorney, where she says her identity and her definition for success felt really tied to what she did for a living. So you might resonate with that. When she started to feel trapped and she was just going through the motions, she wondered, is this all there is? And that's when she knew something had to shift. So we're going to dig deeply into her story about how she prepared to become a lawyer, the career paths she chose along the way, and how she ultimately evolved to doing what she does now. So Megan Smiley is founder of Megan Smiley Coaching and the podcast host of the Lawyer's Escape Pod. I love the name of that. She helps lawyers and other professionals who want to ditch the grind and create a career that's more creative and purposeful. Megan's mission is a lot like mine. It's to help people who feel stuck in unfulfilling professions. And then she helps them launch businesses that align with their life mission, their natural talents, and their values. After deprogramming from the legal world, Megan is fiercely committed to creating space for fun and joy in her life, not just work. And that's what she helps others to do. And I agree so wholeheartedly with that. Because if what you do for a living isn't fun, I think you probably should find something else to do. And that's what we're here to help you with. So we call this episode Embracing Your Evolution. Hello, Megan. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. This is so fun.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation because you, as I said, you are one of those women who proves to us that it can be done and done really, really well, and that you can get out of it what you really want from it, from that questioning. Is this all there is? I love that. So let's start by digging into kind of pulling the curtain back to the beginning of your career. Tell us what your original path was and how did you choose it?
So I graduated from college with no great plan, and I come from a family of lawyers. So to be honest, it was sort of just a default to go to law school. It wasn't wasn't particularly well thought out. It's just something I thought made sense. It was a safe option. So I pursued it, and I went to law school, and I enjoyed law school well enough. And as many of us going through law school, you kind of just get caught up in the sort of system. And when I came out, I wouldn't have said I wanted to be a corporate lawyer, but that's the job I fell into. And so I was doing transactional work, sort of mergers and acquisitions, and helping public companies offer, debt and securities. And not entirely surprisingly to me, I didn't turn out to love that work. And on top of that, it's a field where your life and your job become one. You have very little freedom. Just hours that you're working are sort of crazy. And so that's when I started to realize that, looking even ahead at the senior associates and the partners, I just thought, this isn't for me. So at that point, I started exploring other options. And I would say I was still very in the mindset of whatever next step I take needs to make sense. It needs to be somehow a natural extension of what I've already done. I don't think I was ready at that point to completely throw out what I had professionally built. And so what that looked like for me was I decided I wanted to transition to working at a law school. And I specifically, I had studied abroad in undergrad and law school. I love traveling, all things international. And so I targeted working within an international office at a law school. And I went back and got a master's in higher ed administration, and ultimately found sort of the perfect job that I was looking for at that point, and became the director of international programs at a law school in New York.
Wow. So starting at the beginning, you were lured in, I think, to this idea of being a lawyer, because that's what you had so many people like that saying it's a good profession. We're all, we're successful.
Yep. There were also the warning signs, like my dad, who's a lawyer, said, "Can't you think of something more interesting to do?" Apparently not.
But it happens for so many of us too, that we fall into, we go finish our education and we fall into something like the corporate law that you fell into. It was, offered to you and you went, yeah, sure, why not?
Right.
And that happens to so many people. And then time goes on, and then it doesn't feel like a good fit anymore. And so many people don't do anything about that. They just keep plugging away because they don't want to waste their education, right? Quote unquote.
Right. Yep.
It's so not going to waste. They don't want, that maybe their parents funded the whole thing for them, and there's that sense of obligation. So many things that are going on.
Yeah.
And
then the flip side of that is a lot of people might be first generation, and this is an amount of money that no one in their family has ever made.
So how dare you?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's so much of that going on. And then I love what you said, that the next thing you did had to make sense to you at the time, that you would utilize all of that you had already built in this next thing. And you took it to, you got another degree, and you went to work in higher ed at a university level, helping lawyers, right? Helping soon to be lawyers.
Yeah. And that job specifically was a JD required job. So in my mind, it made sense because it was a job that required the educational background that
Right.
I had.
Right. All right. So let's talk about what we talked a little bit about this, but let's dig into this a little bit. What was going on for you when you decided to move from practicing law to working at a law school? What were some of the things going on in your head?
Part of it was what I said, that I looked down the road at what it looked like to be a partner at a firm. And I thought, that's not what I want. That's not how I want to spend my life.
Well,
Just
what did that mean, being a partner in the firm? What was
it
your
means
perception of that?
it means you're sort of married to your job. You're working all of the time. You are on call 24/7. The expectation is a client calls and needs something and you react, immediately. There are very few boundaries. In general, of course, there's some people that do this, and of course, it may depend a little bit on the type of law that you practice and what kind of firm you're at. But where I was and what I was seeing was, you have no freedom and no boundaries. People are canceling their vacations left and right, missing out on their kids, school events, and it just. I saw what it looked like, and it's not what I wanted for myself.
Yeah. Okay. So when you did transition from higher education, from being a corporate attorney, did you feel you'd found the right fit then?
Initially, I really did. It was sort of substantively, it was an interesting area for me. I got to work with lawyers from all over the world, so that was fun for me. It was, in terms of work-life balance, it was great. It was truly a 9 to 5. Occasionally, I'd have to work after hours, but that was like hosting dinners for interesting people, and for me, that was fun. And vacation, we had a lot of vacation time, and it was on a school's calendar, so there was a lot of freedom and flexibility, and initially the work did interest me. So probably for the first few years, I thought, I've done it. I figured it out. This is going to be great. But it evolved a little bit from there after my initial, I love this. I also think it was a bit of a reaction to the hours that I worked as a corporate attorney. Just not having to work those hours and catching your breath was a relief in and of itself.
Yeah. Okay. I can understand that.
Yeah.
So tell us, what did it feel like when you realized that it wasn't actually what you wanted to do for the rest of your career?
Yeah. Honestly, that was sort of the true existential crisis that I had. I know a lot of people who really struggle to leave the practice of law. And I, for whatever reason, maybe because I didn't think I would like it and then I didn't like it, and it wasn't a surprise to me. That move, while it had its elements of difficulty, it didn't shake me. Once I was in this job where I had really thought that I had thought about it, I had, switched courses, I had, found the job of my dreams, to then realize that this wasn't it. I felt deflated. I felt confused. I felt rudderless. If that wasn't it, I really felt like I had no idea what was.
Wow. Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
I can understand how that can happen. Oh, I love the word you used, rudderless, right? Like no direction. Yeah. Just kind of, again, going through the motions, kind of being taken wherever it leads, and either deciding to be good with that or deciding not to be good with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to ask you something that I know a lot of women, I felt this as well. Was there any sense for you of, this job should be good enough?
Yeah.
And the guilt maybe for wanting something more?
Absolutely. People, it's part of why I started my podcast was I got a lot of people coming in and asking me, like, how did you get this job? This looks like the world's perfect job. It's, you have this work-life balance. It's interesting. I even got to travel with the job. Good benefits, like very secure, lots of free time. It checked all the boxes I thought that I was looking for. And it still had a certain level of prestige to it, I guess I'd say. And I think I just thought, maybe there's something wrong with me if this job isn't enough. It's everything it should be. And maybe I'm somehow just built to be dissatisfied because it just doesn't feel like it's enough for me.
Built to be dissatisfied. Ooh,
yeah.
that feels really heavy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something wrong with me if, checking off all the boxes and still not being happy.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask you about that a little bit. How'd you get over that? That's a big obstacle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Feeling unworthy.
I had to do a lot of internal work. I mean, this whole process really threw me into sort of not just a career search, but a personal development process. And I think I had been a bit confused because when I moved into this job at the law school, I thought, this is enough. I've got an interesting job and it's got sort of boundaries around it and I can spend my free time doing what I want and that'll be good. And what I realized was the missing piece for me about this job was the growth. It got very repetitive. There was not really anywhere to go from there. And I think I had told myself I was okay with just sort of putting my job in a box and not having that be. I didn't think of myself as ambitious because I didn't want to be a partner at a law firm. I didn't want to play that game.
Right.
And so sort of by really slowing down and asking myself, what is it about this? Is it that I'm just built to be dissatisfied? What I found was, no, actually what I'm wanting is that I do have some ambition, not in the transition, sort of traditional sense, but I have ambition to grow as a person, as a professional. And that was the piece that wasn't there for me.
I'm so glad you said that because boredom is a really it can't be ignored. It shouldn't be ignored. And it can be ignored. It absolutely can be ignored.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't ignore it because it is a sign that things are not the way you want them to be, and exploring what it is you really do want and uncovering that it was a beautiful job, check all those boxes, right? Beautiful job for you, but it became boring.
Yeah.
And when we get bored, we get very complacent and we don't, and we start thinking, oh, it should be good enough. Yeah. I should not be looking for anything better than this. I don't deserve anything better than this. And then we go down this spiral that keeps us stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So looking back, would you change any part of your career path?
I really wouldn't. I'm not a big believer in regret. And I think that at each stage, I made the best decision I could with the information and the person I was at that stage.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things put me on a path to create what I have created now, which wouldn't exist and would never have occurred to me if I hadn't gone through all the steps that I went through. So, I don't regret anything. There were certainly times when I was frustrated or thought, what did I get myself into and why did I do that? But I have found that that's not a particularly productive thought to have.
Right.
But the truth is, when I really look at it holistically, I don't regret any. It's just part of the journey, and it's part of what sort of opened my eyes to doing what I'm doing now, where I'm really truly, fulfilled.
And I think it brings up another point. When we get bored, I think the best thing to do is get curious.
Yeah.
Why is that? I think that's what you did. You didn't use that word, but reading between the lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you have to wonder, now, why is that? It's not, and be very emphatic. It's not that this is all I deserve. It's not that I'm not worthy of something different or better for me. This is a perfect job for me at that time, and now it's not, and it's okay to move on. So let's get curious and figure out what that is. So why am I feeling this way? Boredom, right?
Yeah.
You acknowledge that. And what can I do differently to feel more fulfilled, where there is an opportunity for growth for you? Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that we all have to do, is kind of let go of the limiting beliefs of why we should stay where we are, even though we're not happy, even though we're bored, and get curious.
Yeah. And the limiting beliefs about what your other options are, because part of what kept me very frustrated and stuck was looking around for me for other jobs that made sense, that sort of were natural extensions of what I was doing at the law school.
Yeah.
And at some point I started, because a lot of what I did there was sort of events based. At some point I started looking for an events job at a law firm. And I thought, well, I've really lost the plot now. Like, I don't want to go back and work at a law firm. I didn't like that in the first place.
Right.
And sort of for me, what was very challenging was the realization that I had the best job I think I could have found. And what was scary was that for me, the answer was not a different job. It was entrepreneurship. And who am I to be an entrepreneur? That was a real question for me.
Yeah. Yeah. What makes me think? I said that to myself a lot at the beginning. What makes me think I should be doing this, or anybody would want to work with me, or All right.
Or we have ideas of what it looks like. Like, I've told this story before, that my brother is exactly what you think an entrepreneur is. He's like, he was starting businesses in 4th grade and went to business school, and like sort of what you think an entrepreneur looks like and functions like. And that's not who I am. So I was also having to come to terms with, like, is there a way to do this that is authentic to me, even though I don't look like what I thought an entrepreneur looked like.
Yeah, there's that's right. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. We never had an entrepreneur in our family.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what it looked like either. And I spent 30 years in corporate thinking, living somebody else's dream. I realized we're really late in my career. Who am I to, ditch all of that and look for something that is more fulfilling for me. I'm so glad I did, because it is so fulfilling.
Yeah.
And so you and I do similar kinds of work. I would love for you to share with our audience a kind of a high level view of your process to find it, whatever it is for someone else.
Yeah. So my sort of philosophy is that your answers are not outside. I spent many years trying to find the right job or the right, information. And ultimately where I found my answers was by, like you said, getting curious about myself, and diving deep into what makes me tick. What are my natural strengths? What are my interests? What are my values? And really examining that for clues as to where you'll be happy, rather than taking all of your cues from outside. And from that starting point, combined with really what's the vision of the life you want to live? Do you see yourself working remotely? Do you see yourself not working afternoons so you can pick your kid up at school? Like, what is the life that you want to live? And then taking all of those pieces and constructing your plan so that it is in alignment with your vision and your strengths and your values and your interests.
You touched on so many things that I think are so critical. And that's why I say you and I do very similar work, because building a foundation of what you value most now that things are changing for you, they're changing inside of you.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
There's an unrest, there's some restlessness going on, and you're not quite sure what it is. And it can be very, it can be a lot of things. It can be discouraging. Why am I not happy with what I'm doing?
Yeah.
It can be unnerving. I don't have a clue what's next.
Yeah.
And yet it can be so insightful going through that period of time, and going with the flow, right? Trying not to fight it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And deciding what you value most today, making that your foundation for everything. And then the vision gets built on your values, what it is you really want. And I love the way you said it. What do you want your life to look like? You get to choose. We all do.
Yeah.
It does not have to be chosen for us, although many of us live that way.
Yeah.
Right? I'm living up to other people's expectations of what I should be doing with my life. And that, is rooted in, sometimes very early in our childhood, and growing from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
that's a lot of the work that has to get done. Is, I think, at least my people, I hear a lot, like, if I knew what my passion was, I would do it. And it's this idea that they have to, like, conceive of something out of nothing. And I think it's much more about excavating the truth for yourself that's already there.
Right. Right. What do you really care about? What do you really love to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, and a lot of people, another limiting belief, I can't make money I can't support myself doing what I love.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's probably not true.
Right.
But you have to explore that.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people stop themselves at that thought.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds cool, but I'm not even going to look into it because it's not realistic.
Right. All right. So I want to wrap up the way we always wrap up this show. Mm-hmm. I always ask my guests to share with our viewers some really practical tips and strategies that might help our listeners if they are struggling with this evolution that may be going on in themselves, and how do we embrace that? Yeah. So, Megan, what's your first tip?
My first tip is something we sort of just talked about, is to slow down. I think sometimes we get very frantic about, let me apply for this job and that job, and that can mask what you really want. So slow down and ask yourself those questions of, what is my vision? What are my strengths? Not the skills I've built in my job, but what am I naturally good at? When the people who know me best are like, you're the go-to person for X, what is that? And just kind of be in data collection mode about these things about yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of people, especially if they are out of work, right? I deal with some clients who feel this compulsion to get another job.
Yeah.
Before they do that exploration to figure out, if I have this time, this gift of time, how can I use that to figure out what it is I really want to do next?
Yeah.
And there's what do you want? What does it look like for you?
Yeah.
This does not have to take a long time to uncover, especially if you're working with someone who can help bring it out of you, right? Someone, for your clients or mine, that's one of the roles we play, right? Is to help them uncover, kind of dig deep and uncover some stuff. It's an important place to start. Don't put the cart before the horse, kind of thing. Yeah. What's your second tip?
My second tip is it's sort of two tips in one, I would say, which is, as you do this process of self-discovery, really embrace the truth of what your strengths are. I think particularly for women, they sometimes find that their strengths and their interests are things they don't deem marketable or valuable. And if you find that what you're naturally drawn to is something that you're telling yourself that story about, notice it and look for evidence of the possible. Because there are people out there doing all sorts of jobs, running all sorts of businesses that are based around things that you might not expect. And rather than telling yourself, oh, blanket, that's not possible and that's not valuable, challenge yourself to look for evidence of the possible.
I love that.
Yeah.
You just hit the nail on the head for me, because that's exactly why I do this podcast.
Yeah.
To introduce people to people like you.
Yeah.
Because you are a role model for what's possible.
Yeah.
And a lot of my guests are. They've done something that is a soulful fit for them, right?
Yeah.
And get it, and that is evidence. I love that you said seek out. I'm paraphrasing here, but seek out people who are doing what you want, what you think you want to do.
Yeah.
And use them as reference books, right? As the reference material.
Yeah.
So how did you ask them lots of questions? So what was going on in your head? This is what's going on in mine. And they're going to go, oh yeah, that happened for me too. And this is how I got through it. And it's just a wonderful way to kind of get drawn in to the possibility, because it's so exciting.
Yeah. And that's exactly why I started my podcast as well, was just to highlight stories of what's possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Do you have another tip?
Yeah. My last one, and again, we sort of referred to this, but is to get really honest with yourself about how you define success, because we are so inundated with societal, family stories about what success looks like. And I think we are sort of on autopilot in sort of pursuing a certain version of success that actually isn't what we want. And, really write it down. Success for me is having the freedom to work, 4 hours a day. Success for me is feeling connected to the work I'm doing. Success for me is having enough money. I'm not an anti making money person, right? Like that could be part of it, but is having a certain title at a corporation really, does that actually mean success to you? Or is that a success measure that you're getting from the external world that you've adopted? And just really getting honest with yourself about what you mean by success.
That's a great one to end on, because it is, I think it's something that many people, many of my clients don't even think about that. They don't even think about examining what does success look like for them. And it's one of the most eye-opening exercises to go through, because if you're really honest with yourself as you go through this and you start asking yourself those kinds of questions, what does success look like for me? And writing it down, what starts to happen is your vision starts to evolve.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're looking at the things you wrote down and you're going, yeah, that would feel really, really good if I could do that. Well, why not? What's stopping you?
Yeah.
Why not? And that's always, a question I love to ask my clients when they throw up the roadblocks. Well, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Megan, this has been so much fun. I really have enjoyed. Thank you for being so transparent about what you went through, because I think it's important for other people to hear that it is, it doesn't just happen automagically, that those of us who are doing what we love to do, that we just fell into it. That's hardly ever the case in my experience.
No.
It takes some concerted effort and some direction, some vision. And I love that you work with other lawyers who are struggling as you struggled to find what it is that makes them feel fulfilled, and, like I like to call it, a soulful fit, have a soulful fit career.
Yeah. Yeah. It's work that I love to do, but it was certainly a stumbling road to get here. And so, if you feel lost or like you're not sure what the next step is, it doesn't mean that isn't the end result for you. It's just getting on the road to figuring it out is the first step.
Right. I love that. All right, Megan, I know there are going to be some people who want to reach out to you. So what's the one best way for them to do that?
The best way to find me is my website, which is just www.megansmiley.com. And from there, you can find my social links. You can find I've got both a regular podcast for lawyers. I've also got a private podcast where I walk through my framework. It's called Daydreams to Designs, how to think about going from sort of an idea to a business. And there's also some information on a book that I co-wrote that just came out called The Ultimate Guide to a Soul-Aligned Business.
I love that.
Yeah. So all of that can be found on the website.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Megan, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. I appreciate that you shared your story with us and the possibilities. That's such an empowering word. And I know that more people need to explore the possibilities.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for everything that you do with this podcast. As someone who also hosts a podcast, I know how much work and commitment and goes into all of this, and how much these stories impact people. So thank you.
Well, thank you for telling yours. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
And for those of you watching and listening, thank you. I appreciate that you're a part of this community. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a comment or a review. If there's a star rating where you're listening, just pick a star. We would love to get your feedback. And as I said at the top of the show, I love creating and sharing resources for professional women who feel stuck in their careers. So if something in this episode resonated with you and you'd like a fresh perspective on what you're going through, let's have a chat. Reach out to Megan or to me. You'll find all the links you need to learn more about us in the show notes below. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, I'd like to invite you to join my private Facebook group called The Career Transition Roadmap, and the link for that is below as well. So let's meet again here next week on Wednesday, same time, because I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. Until next time, I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.